The Jantar Mantar protest over the exam paper leak has now turned into a clash of two narratives. For days, the country has heard the voices of students who claim they were lathi charged while demanding accountability over repeated paper leaks. They say a peaceful protest was met with excessive force and that innocent students paid the price for the actions of a few. But today, another side is demanding to be heard. The families of Delhi police personnel who were deployed at Jantar Mantar have now come forward with their own accounts of what happened that day. They say their husbands, fathers, and sons were not aggressors. They were officers performing their duty. They claim several policemen were attacked by an aggressive mob with stones, flower pots, slippers, and other objects after violent elements infiltrated the protests. Some officers reportedly suffered serious head injuries. Helmets were shattered, uniforms were soaked in blood. Several policemen were rushed to hospitals where they received stitches and emergency treatment. One police officer's son says his father, a sub-inspector, was pulled into a mob, allegedly beaten unconscious, and returned home hours later with blood-soaked uniform and 4 stitches on his head. Another family says an officer's helmet was smashed during the violence and believes it may have saved his life. What hurts these families even more is what they are saying is watching police personnel being portrayed as villains on social media. Now, despite the injuries they suffered while trying to control the situation. Now, at the same time, the students continue to insist that their protest was born out of genuine anger over exam paper leaks and a collapsing recruitment system. They argue that the actions of a violent few should not define an entire movement, and they continue to question whether the police response was proportionate. So, what really happened on July 20th? Was a peaceful protest hijacked by violent elements? Did the police face an organized assault while enforcing the law? Or did the use of force against protesters make a bad situation even worse? Now, to discuss more on this, I'm joined in by Sanjay Sahai, former ADGP Karnataka, K. Gopika Babu, Gen Z protester, Savio Roderick, senior journalist and editor, Goa Chronicle, advocate Nikhil Jain, who's also a political analyst. Now, let me in fact come first to Sanjay Sahai, former ADGP Karnataka. Sanjay Sahai, how do you in fact see this particular aspect of the family members coming from the policeman's side and telling them this is what our fathers, our sons, and our husbands in fact suffered when the Gen Z protest happened? Now, over here, I do not condone the violence that's happening over there. There is a protest that happened. There are elements who have in fact been part of that protest. But the policeman's say is always not there mostly. This is probably for the first time you see the policemen's families coming out and telling this is what we have suffered. But this is also part of occupational hazard. Was it right to bring the families to actually tell what happened to them? Because this is for the first time that you actually see families being brought and told that this is what happened to us. Why is there a battle of narrative?
Why has this been made into a battle of narratives? I cannot understand. And whether the government is interested in proving that it is good and it did everything right on the social media and in the public perception. The government is completely well within its rights to take action as it is warranted. And in self-defense, you are permitted to do as per the law whatever is required. Now, there are a couple of things. One is that there was a complete intelligence failure with regards to the mobilization which was happening. From first day till whichever 22nd day or 23rd day when Sansad Chalo happened, actually there was no effort made from the side of the government to get into a dialogue and sort it out. Third is when Sonnam Wangchu was taken away. I don't think anybody who is at a protesting site with 20 days of indefinite strike is picked up by police and taken for medical treatment. The doctors can take him for medical treatment depending on the other people who are available there with consent, because medical treatment is required and nobody can deny that, and police could have provided the security. So that is absolutely fine. Now the police personnel, their wives, their children coming in that and saying that this was the narrative, which primarily means that government is not taking any action. Why they came? It is narrative to narrative that has to be sorted out by the government. So there is a narrative which the protesters or cockroach Janata Party is doing. It is the job of the government and not even the government, more so of the political party to quash that narrative. The job of the government is also not to quash the narrative. The job of the government is to do what is legally to be done with taking all due precaution. Now, any protest, it is not something generic in nature as we see. Now, in that particular protest, and you take the 20th July also, it finally comprises of some 12 to 14 cases. Now, 12 to 14 cases, you will be having accused, name of the accused, you will be having evidence, you will be having narratives, you will have medical record. What stops you from completing the investigation of the case and charge sheet those fellows? It is straight, simple, and clear. Why we are talking of so many variety of other things that they are into a social media narrative. And if you really get into the social media narrative, let me tell you very, very clearly, however much the present political parties and governments might try, it is next to impossible to beat the narrative of 10, 20, 30,000 people, everybody moving with his own camera, coming with own story. So you have the capability to reach the global audience unfettered. There are no rules or anything which applies to them. And if you try and implement some rules, you might be able to catch one, two, five, 10 of them. So my understanding, and it does not look very nice. It is my personal point of view. I might be completely wrong. To bring in children and wives into this official duty. Okay,
That is a question that
and
I had. In fact, that was a question that I was also trying to. Let me
so
get in.
I'll tell you, it has never happened. It has never happened, and I hope and pray that it doesn't happen again. And police has sufficient powers, and the government has sufficient powers, and we are told that it is a strong government as well. So wherever there is a criminal activity, and I am not even against, if I am a student and I end up killing somebody or I end up committing some offense, the law is applicable to me. Nobody can say that law is not applicable to me just because I'm a leader, just because I'm a student, just I'm coming for the right cause. Cause is one part of the story, criminality is other part of the story. But the issue is where everybody is on a back foot that you put cameras and you never use those cameras. You are using these cameras ex post facto to prove something. So that is where the challenge is. These people, 2,800 people or whatever the number of people, now these people did not appear onto the scene at 11 a.m. on 20th of July. They would have been infiltrating, and one of the victims or police officer who got injured, her daughter or son was saying that he was saying it is a crowd full of antisocial elements. What stopped the Delhi police to pick them up, to get in for preventive detention? They have all the laws, all the rules under their command. And today also, of the 12, 14, whatever number of cases, I still don't know how many people have been arrested.
Right.
And that being as it stands, why did government go in for an agreement without the caveat that we will not be letting off people who have indulged in criminal act? And lastly, if 2,400 people with criminal records are coming there, just because I have a criminal record does not mean that I am committing offense again. You will basically book a case against me if I have committed the offense again, whatever offense.
Right.
So that is where we stand.
Right. Let me, in fact, get in Savio Rodrigues, senior journalist and editor of the Goa Chronicle, into this. Savio Rodrigues, how do you, in fact, see this kind of a narrative where, the police are saying, trying to put out their side of the story as well, because they think that they have been overwhelmingly vilified in a certain way on social media, and therefore let the family explain what has happened to their men in the family who are in the line of duty. But you are in the line of duty. This is something that is there as part of the occupational hazard. And at the same time, why is it that the family members had to be brought in to, in fact, say something like this? Is it because there is a need for it? Because it shouldn't be that only one side of it is in fact heard, but it is a very complicated situation, isn't it? On one side, you have the students speaking about police brutality. On the other side, the police saying that they also have been at the receiving end of what has happened. Why is it that the online narrative is also important?
And thank you for having me on your show. It's important to understand the complexity of the situation more clearly. Firstly, is the genuine problem, genuine concern that the students who were protesting brought out, along with the students that were there, and it started to gain numbers after Sonam Wangchuk actually got picked up by the police at that point of time and taken to the health center. That is when the crowd started to get a lot more, and that is when the narrative actually started to spin to say that there is some sort of force being used to disrupt that particular protest. Using that as an excuse, you had undoubtedly a lot of antisocial elements that came to the protest. Now, the problem, what happens is, as much as, and my colleague who's a former police personnel will tell you that it gets very difficult in a mob of people to distinguish between who's genuinely good and who's actually the criminal element. And that is why there are certain powers given to the police to behave in a particular manner, which may or may not be right at that point of time. And therefore, they have investigations which are related to it. If there is a certain element of brutality, they need to be investigated and they need to be dealt with in the strictures that are there as far as the laws that are concerned. But the worrying factor is not that. The worrying factor is, you know what, the saddest part is that there are two genuine people. One, the people with the problems, and the people who are supposed to solve the problem, which is the government. Between these two, you've got some elements that have come in and created a huge disruption that has made the students completely angry with the administrators of the law and order at this point of time. And therefore, the police, having no choice to counter that narrative, which is huge and negative on the social media platform, are turning to bringing their family members to say that, we also faced